Okay, I think we are ready to go. Thank you all so much for joining us for tonight's webinar, Protecting Town Island, Now and Forever. My name is Carrie Hamill, and I'm the Director of Conservation for the Manitoba region of the Nature Conservancy of Canada. And I'm pleased to say that I'll be have the honor of being your moderator tonight. I'm really excited to be able to spend some time with you, hear about the Nature Conservancy of Canada and Town Island, both as a member myself of the NCC team, but also someone whose family roots run quite deep in the Lake of the Woods area. 6 generations of my family have lived, worked, fished, and camped in the bays and islands of the Kenora area. So this is really exciting for me. I'd like to start tonight by stating that we at the Nature Conservancy of Canada respectfully acknowledge that the work that we do across the country is on the traditional territories of many Indigenous nations and communities, both past and present. For millennia, they have worked to protect these landscapes and the life these areas sustain. I would like to thank these original caretakers and acknowledge the ongoing work and presence of Indigenous peoples in Canada today. So the Nature Conservancy of Canada is a national charity, Canada's leading not-for-profit private land conservation organization. And we work to sustain and protect our most important natural areas and the species within them. Since 1962, NCC and its partners have helped protect 14 million hectares, that's 35 million acres, from coast to coast to coast. To learn more, please visit our website at natureconservancy.ca. I'm excited to say that we're going to be joined tonight by 2 of my NCC teammates, Dana Klanuski, Director of Development and Communications for the Ontario region, and Kristin Ferguson, Program Director for the Ontario region. Before we begin, however, just want to cover a couple quick housekeeping topics. So we have a lot of people on here joining from across the country and all over, so you may experience a temporary glitch during the live stream. We thank you in advance for your patience if that happens. Today's webinar is being recorded, and if you watch your inbox, we'll be sharing a link to the recording after the event, so you can keep an eye out for that. We welcome you to revisit the content yourself, and please consider sharing it with colleagues, friends, and family. And we want you to join in the conversation and share your thoughts with us through our online community. We're active on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And if you do join the conversation, either during the event or after, please consider using the hashtag #NCCNatureTalks. During this event, we also invite your comments and questions. You'll notice a Q&A chat box on the screen. If you think of a question for the speakers while they're speaking, please just type it in there. If you can include who the question is intended for, and we'll do our best to answer these questions at the end of the webinar. So at this time, we're going to get on with the show. I'm really pleased to introduce our first speaker, Dana Klanuski, Director of Development and Communications for the Ontario region. Dana has worked with the Nature Conservancy of Canada for over 16 years in a variety of fundraising and communication roles, with a focus on projects in Ontario. Her love of nature stems from childhood summers spent at the family cottage in the Madawaska Valley near beautiful Algonquin Park. The floor is all yours, Dana.
Thanks so much, Carrie. Hopefully you can hear me. The entire team at the Nature Conservancy of Canada is really thrilled that we will have a role to play in protecting Town Island for the future. We recognize that we are relatively new to Town Island's story and want to acknowledge the shoulders on which we stand at this point. The many passionate campers, neighbors, volunteers, and the city of Kenora who have cared for the island over many generations and who have been working to find a solution to conserve the entire island for the future. We are excited to work with you to see the island secured and also to work with you to steward the land for the benefit of future generations. So we realize that we have a lot of people joining us today who are learning about the Nature Conservancy of Canada for the first time. So we want to take just a couple of minutes to introduce you to the organization and what it is that we do. NCC was founded nearly 16 years ago by a group of friends who met through the Federation of Ontario Naturalists. They realized that many of the places that they like to go birding and botanizing were disappearing at an alarming rate. And they had a bold idea. What if there could be a Canadian charity whose purpose it was to buy and own these places and keep them undeveloped? And so it was in 1962 that the Nature Conservancy of Canada was founded by a group of volunteers to do just that. They modeled it after another group that had been founded recently in the United States, the Nature Conservancy. You may know it by its acronym of TNC, but the two organizations are completely separate and always have been. Just trying to advance my slides, everyone. There we go. NCC was founded in Ontario, but the intention was always that it would operate across the country. And today, as Carrie mentioned, NCC has conserved 35 million acres from coast to coast to coast. These places have mostly been concentrated along the southern border, which is where we find the greatest amount of biological diversity and also the greatest pressures posed by human development. Some examples of our work include our collaboration with ranchers in southern Alberta to protect 32,000 acres at the Waterton Park front, which serves as a buffer at a wildlife corridor adjacent to the Waterton Lakes National Park. The Fort Ellis Conservation Project near St. Lazare, Manitoba, where NCC is protecting endangered grassland habitats adjacent to the Ellis Archie Community Pasture. And the Shaw Wilderness Park, which is actually within the city limits of Halifax in Nova Scotia. So it's now an urban wilderness park for the community to enjoy. And though we've been successful in so many ways, the reality is that nature still faces many serious threats, including the impacts of our changing climate, habitat loss and fragmentation, and the growing threat of non-native invasive species, which have the potential to alter ecosystems significantly. Habitat conservation is one of the most important and direct ways that we can address these threats. But the problems are vast, and we recognize that we collectively need to pick up the pace to protect more places for the future. We know that what we do here in Canada is going to have a positive ripple effect around the world. It's our great forests that clean the air we breathe, our massive northern wetlands store carbon, and our tallgrass prairies, temperate forests, and limestone plains harbor species that face a greater risk of extinction than even the giant panda. We have a responsibility to conserve nature in Canada for the benefit of the world. NCC's work has four main pillars: science, securement, stewardship, and engagement. Much as we would like to protect everything, we have limited resources and we have to make choices. And science is what helps us prioritize. And we make decisions about our activities using the best available conservation science. Land securement is what NCC is best known for. There are a few different tools in the land securement toolbox, including the purchase of land, which is what will be happening with Town Island. But we also accept donations of land, and we can also place what's known as a conservation easement on a property. And essentially what that means is that a landowner continues to own the property, but they donate or sell certain development rights to NCC for the future. For example, they may give up the right to subdivide a property or harvest trees. Stewardship is the forever part of our work. When we acquire a piece of land, that really is just the beginning. We are responsible for taking care of it. This includes monitoring it, responding to issues that may arise. In some cases, we may want to restore habitat. And it also includes some of the less glamorous parts of owning a piece of property, like paying taxes or insurance. And last but not least is engagement. Our primary motivation for conserving land is the preservation of biological diversity. But we recognize the importance that nature plays in the lives of people, and we recognize that NCC's properties can play a really important role in nurturing a love for nature. The vast majority of NCC's lands are accessible for low-impact pedestrian access. So I want to just come back to the science piece that we just talked about, because it is such an integral part of how we work at NCC. We have completed assessments of all the ecoregions across Canada, which are those dark green areas on the map of the country that you see. That assessment work helps us to understand the most important places that we should be working in order to conserve biodiversity across the country. And from that assessment, we've identified 100 priority natural areas for us to really focus our work on, including what we call the Rainy Lake to Lake of the Woods natural area. And for each of these priority areas, we've created a conservation plan. It's essentially a business plan that outlines all of the properties we'd like to acquire, the key habitats and species we want to protect. And once we acquire a property, we develop what we call a property management plan to guide specific work on the ground on that property. And the benefit of this process is that we can track and measure our progress over time to understand if our work is having the benefits that we want it to. Our work would not be possible without the communities, neighbors, volunteers, and donors who come together to make great things happen. NCC is fortunate to have over 300 staff working across the country, but there's far more work that can be done in a year that could be accomplished by staff alone. In communities across the country, our staff are joined by conservation volunteers who help us monitor and document species at risk. They help us plant trees, remove invasive species, maintain trails, and more. We're very excited not just about acquiring the Town Island property, but also about the opportunity to work more closely with the Lake of the Woods community in conserving this incredibly significant landscape. And with that, I'm going to turn things back over to Carrie.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dana. We really appreciate you providing an overview of NCC, how we do our work, and how we kind of choose the priority areas across this vast country. So our next speaker today is Kristin Ferguson, Program Director for the Ontario region. Kristin undertakes a variety of conservation roles, but is largely focused on the incredible natural areas of northern and northwestern Ontario. Kristin obtained her BSc in Environmental Biology from the University of Guelph and an MES in Restoration Ecology from the University of Waterloo. She is passionate about land securement and cultivating unique partnerships that result in win-win solutions both for nature and for people. In her free time, she enjoys hiking and birding. Whenever you're ready, Kristin.
Thanks so much, Carrie. Yeah, so as Dana started telling us a bit about why Lake of the Woods is so special, it's come out of this incredibly detailed scientific analysis we undertook across all of Ontario that really shone a spotlight on the Rainy Lake to Lake of the Woods area as a priority for conservation. A big part of what makes this area so special is the vast number of freshwater islands. And I have to think about that for a second, because as somebody who lives in proximity to the Great Lakes or Lake of the Woods or Lake Winnipeg, we might take freshwater islands a bit for granted in Canada, but they're actually something that's pretty rare across the world. In addition, this area has forests that are vast and uninterrupted. It has beautiful wetlands and unimpeded rivers flowing into gorgeous lakes. As well, there are unique communities such as tall grass prairies and rare plants like the Ram's Head lady slippers, which is pictured here. All of these things come together to make Rainy Lake to Lake of the Woods a really important place for NCC to be working. So NCC has been here for some time. We've had an active land conservation program in place in this natural area for about 20 years. And I'll pop up a map in a moment to show you some of the places we've worked over that time. Recently, we established our next generation of our natural area conservation plan for the period spanning 2019 to 2029. And this plan guides all of our work in the area, from land securement to stewardship activities to outreach and those key pillars of our work that Dana mentioned. NCC is also a sponsor of the Lake of the Woods District Stewardship Association Lake Smart program. So for those who are on Lake of the Woods might be familiar with the friendly youth that riding around in a boat covered in stickers, educating you about the best way to take care of your cottage property. And we're proud to partner with them. So this is a map of the Rainy Lake to Lake of the Woods natural area, and everywhere you see one of the little green NCC leaves is a place that we have a conservation project, whether it be a property we own outright or a conservation easement that's been placed with a landowner who wanted to see their lands protected in a similar way as to how NCC protects them. We have a couple of properties right in and around Lake of the Woods, including one on Hay Island, one up on the Winnipeg River, one down close to the Minnesota border. So you can see a bit of the breadth of our work, and we're really excited to be now looking to add another leaf to the map with the acquisition of Town Island. So what makes Town Island itself special? Well, first of all, it's that freshwater island piece again, knowing that that is something that's really rare, and Town Island in particular is an island of very significant size. All in, it's about 230 acres, and the Nature Conservancy of Canada is working to hopefully acquire 202 acres of the island, the portion outlined in yellow there. So this island has a variety of forest types across it, as well as different types of productive shoreline habitats, some sandy beaches, some rocky shores. And NCC knows that the threat here is real. Lake of the Woods is a desirable place for second home development. So preventing development by purchasing this property and ensuring it's conserved will help reduce the threats of things like habitat loss, habitat fragmentation, the potential degradation to water quality that would come if you began developing the cottage lots that this island could support, which are many. So preventing things like erosion and pollution. And we know water quality is a concern in Lake of the Woods, and keeping algal blooms down is very important. And also all of that would disturb the sensitive wildlife that are present on this island. So the biodiversity is high, the threats are real. On Town Island, there are several active bald eagle nests. There are American white pelicans found in the nearby waters. And I know for some Lake of the Woods locals, American pelicans, I've heard, oh, they're just like seagulls to us, but they are pretty special. They're pretty exciting. They're rare in Ontario. They're listed as rare. So having them in the productive waters around Town Island is something that's quite special. Those sensitive and productive shoreline areas that I mentioned are excellent spawning areas for fish species like walleye and smallmouth bass. That's important for the food web in the water, as well as folks who perhaps are using the area for angling. On the island, we know there are some locally uncommon bur oak forests, and often when you get bur oak forests in this area, you might find some rare plants within them. So we'll certainly be keeping an eye out for those during our surveys. And like any freshwater island on the way from the southern hemisphere up to the Arctic, this is an important stopover spot for migratory birds, making that amazing annual flight that they're starting to do right now, lucky for all of us. So the Nature Conservancy of Canada's vision for Town Island is first and foremost to work with the community, whether that be residents of Kenora, cottagers on Lake of the Woods, Indigenous communities, camp groups in the area, to really learn and understand about the ways Town Island has been being used and how people would like to see it being used into the future. One of the first things we'll do is complete a detailed baseline inventory of the site. So that's figuring out everyone who's out there, everything that's out there, from the trails to the birds to the plants to the critters, doing our best to really get a snapshot in time of how this property is functioning. And that information from the baseline inventory will feed into a 5-year property management plan, which is a standard for us on every property we own. And that management plan directs us to do things like monitor the property annually, to ensure that all of the forests and shorelines are in good condition, to manage any threats we see emerging. We know common reed or Phragmites grass is an emerging threat in this area, and we want to do our best to detect it early and stay on top of it. And the management plan will also outline the ways in which we'll continue to interact with the community as the years go on. Oh dear, apologies. So the thing about Town Island is we really know it is this community gem, and that historical use and the historical love of the people in this area for Town Island is an incredibly important part of its story. So NCC does intend to continue permitting access to the island by the groups who have used it and loved it and cared for it over the years. And that baseline inventory I mentioned, where we have a look around the whole island, that's going to ensure that all those existing uses are compatible with conservation. And we know that these community members, many of you who are with us here tonight, have been and can continue to play such an important role in helping steward this island. these valuable partnerships are going to mean a lot to NCC going forward, and we're grateful for all the work and care that's gone into Town Island to date to keep it in the amazing state that it is in. So as you might know, the Nature Conservancy of Canada and the City of Kenora in February reached an agreement for NCC to purchase Town Island with a closing date of August 2022, provided we can raise all the funds required to do so. The land itself comes with a price tag of $2.25 million. And on top of that, there are the associated costs like legal fees, appraisal costs. And what NCC does is actually for every property we acquire, we take 20% of the land value and put it into a stewardship endowment fund. And that fund, it's important to continue to generate revenue that pays for stewardship work on the land in the years going forward. We're really excited to announce that the City of Kenora has contributed $75,000 to the Stewardship Endowment Fund. So we really want to thank the City of Kenora for being a great partner in this initiative so far, and we're really excited to work with you to get this one to the finish line. We're also excited to share some breaking news tonight that since announcing the intention for NCC to purchase the property, we've had several generous anonymous donors come forward to pledge matching gifts totaling $100,000 to help us kick off our fundraising campaign. We are so grateful to them and hope that for those watching the webinar, you might consider making a gift to help us access that matching funds. And we'll share details about how you could do that in just a moment. So for now, I'll turn things back to Carrie.
Well, thank you so much, Kristin. This is all, super exciting, and it's just, yeah, it's so amazing to see all this community effort to date, and as we build this momentum. Thank you to you. We're grateful for sharing why Town Island is such an important opportunity, NCC's vision for partnering on this, and how we can all help make this vision come to be. Now, I'm looking at the chat here. It looks like we have a few questions for the speakers. I'm just going to get that to open up. And if you have any other questions right now that you haven't yet submitted, please consider putting those up here in the chat box. And just let us know who the question is for. So our first question here that I can see is from Anonymous. How will the community be engaged in this project? And I'm going to turn that one over to you, Kristin.
Sure thing. Yeah, thanks, Carrie. Yeah, so as I mentioned, we're definitely aware of all of the unique users of the island. We've heard from a lot of them. We've made a point to connect with them. So what we'll want to do is continue as we move through the process of our fundraising plan and we start to make those stewardship plans for the future, is just encouraging people to reach out to us, and we're going to do our best to reach out to as many people who have a stake and a care for Town Island, rights to use the island. And we really are kind of eager to hear it all, because we'd certainly like to respect the way it's been being used and make sure that that use is in line with biodiversity conservation, and find those win-win solutions for ensuring that Town Island is a place that people can continue to use and love for years going forward.
Awesome, thank you. Kristin, I think the next one is for you as well. You mentioned invasive species. What species are a concern in Lake of the Woods, and what will NCC do about them?
So the one example I'd mentioned briefly, which I can dive into a bit, is common reed grass, or Phragmites. It's Phragmites australis. It's got a few names, but you can't miss this grass. Dana actually showed a picture of it earlier. It can be 6, 10, 12 feet tall with a big bushy seed head on it. And this grass is a real problem in wetland and shoreline areas. It can actually colonize and then completely take over a shoreline area, excluding all other plants, changing the way the water moves in that system. It can potentially dry out wet areas. So Phragmites is a major concern, and it's a major problem throughout a lot of Ontario. So we're quickly gaining a lot of expertise in controlling it. We do that by working with the best available science, great partners, the best advice and the best tools and the best volunteers in the world. So that's one of the ones we'd certainly be keeping an eye out for. I'm aware there are a lot of aquatic invasive species in the waters around Town Island, and those tend to need more of sort of a team approach of maybe a larger provincial or coordinated municipal multi-partner approach. So NCC would be happy to be involved in any of those initiatives.
Thanks, Kristin. Dana, I'm going to give this question to you from Stephen D. Is this project a one-off for NCC, or do you think that you'll conserve more land here?
Yeah, this is certainly not a one-off for NCC. We certainly are interested in acquiring future lands in the Rainy Lake to Lake of the Woods area. As I mentioned previously, we do have this natural area conservation plan for the region, and land acquisition is a big part of that. And we've already heard from some other landowners in the area expressing an interest in possibly working with us on some conservation projects. So I think it's safe to say that this will not be the one project that we do in the area, and we look forward to building relationships and seeing what more we can do.
That's exciting. Thank you. I'm not sure who this is best suited for, so I'll let you guys figure it out. How do you balance the needs of species with the needs of people?
That's a good question, Carrie, and with my background in stewardship, I'm guessing that one's for me. And it is a balancing act. That's a fantastic question, because humans are part of nature, and we need to be on the lands, enjoying the lands, to truly appreciate them, to really make that connection so that we understand how to balance our activities in nature. So NCC doesn't have hard principles, like X amount of trail per island or anything like that, but generally we're just looking around to ensure we're not seeing significant negative impacts. And if we find sensitive or rare plants, communities, what have you, on the land, we'll make a point to direct human use away from those areas, and we may educate with signage, make an attractive trail system over that way. So there's a few ways to come at it, but it's definitely an iterative learning experience, and really learning what's important to people too helps inform our decisions, so we're making the right ones that will be the most sustainable on the landscape.
Excellent, thank you. Dana, this one I think is for you. When do you need to raise the money by?
Such a great question. Yes, so we are aiming to have all of the funds raised by August of 2022, which is when we need the funds in order to actually buy the property.
Excellent, thank you. Well, there's so many questions here, lots of interest. This is exciting. Okay, Kristin, who owns the land on the island that will not be part of the NCC acquisition?
So the piece of the island we showed over on the west is owned by the Banai Bris camp, and they are longtime historical users of the island who purchased that piece of it. So we're happy to have heard from camp members already about their support of NCC moving ahead with the purchase on the remainder of the island, and we'll look forward to working with them for sure as one of those key community interest groups. Thank
you. I have another question for you, Kristin, as well. Anonymous says, you mentioned that NCC is hoping to acquire approximately 202 acres, but what happens in the event that the money is not raised?
We really like to plan for the best case scenario, and when NCC enters into an agreement of purchase and sale, we have confidence that we can find a path of success forward to closing the property. In the worst case scenario that happened, we would of course offer donors the chance to have their funds returned to them, but I think if we find ourselves with a bit more to go than we thought at the end, that's what really fires us up to get creative, to ask the people who've helped support this project, well, who else can we ask? And fundraising is a big part of what we do and a big part of our success here at NCC. So I'm gonna focus on we can do this.
Awesome. Question for either of you. Maybe I'll give it to you, Dana, first. So how will NCC work with First Nations on this project?
Yeah, it's a good question, and I will ask Kristin for help on this particular question. NCC is committed to working with First Nations communities right across the country to understand what we can do to, work towards solutions for nature. So there will be an opportunity, I think, with this project to engage with First Nations communities. It's early days still, so Kristin, I don't know if there's anything more that you wanted to share.
Just to say that I started the process of doing some outreach to Indigenous communities. If there are any members watching the call tonight, I would certainly encourage you to get in touch. I have heard from a couple folks already, just lots of support for keeping public access there, as they've enjoyed using the property over the years. So yeah, NCC works under our new Indigenous engagement framework, which you can find on our website, which endeavors to engage Indigenous peoples in a way that's fair, that works towards reconciliation, and that's something we're deeply committed to doing and doing more of and doing better of.
Thank you. I have a question from Carrie. I think it's for you, Kristin. What has been the past use of this island, and what are the unique biodiversity, maybe some of the aspects on the island that you haven't mentioned yet?
I did a pretty exciting deep dive into the island's biodiversity over the past couple of weeks. It was really neat for me to learn about all those species that I mentioned. So I have kind of talked about kind of the big shiny ones, the bald eagles, the American white pelican, a really nice mix of tree species, everything from ash to poplar to a bunch of different conifers, spruce and fir. So really nice, diverse forests. And I was really intrigued to learn about the fishery around the island and why some of the different habitats and the water depths and the substrate. So is it sand or is it rocky? What sort of fish spawning that might actually be supporting. So I'll certainly be peering into the waters around the shorelines to see what else I can learn. And we will do a detailed inventory, and I'm excited to do that and see what else we might find. There could be rarities out there. There could be interesting migratory birds using the property. So lots of info to come from our baseline inventory work.
Thank you. We have time, I think, for one last question here from Eloise. In the paper, I read that the city of Kenora is selling the property to NCC for $2.25 million, but you mentioned that you're raising $2.85 million. So why are you raising more than the cost of the land? I guess whoever wants to answer that.
I can go back to that if you like, Dana, because
Sure.
Yeah, we thought that question might come up for sure, because there's the price of the land and then there's the price of doing the deal. So on top of the 2.25 million, there's all the associated costs. There's land transfer taxes, legal fees, the things that we all have to pay for when we're doing land transactions. NCC will get an appraisal to understand fair market value. Just to ensure that we've got the price point and the right point, which we believe we do. The property is likely subject to HST, so it's kind of all the ugly side of things. But then in addition, there's the really cool part, which is the 20% of the land value that goes into NCC's Stewardship Endowment Fund. And the Stewardship Endowment Fund generates annual revenue, and that revenue then pays NCC staff to ensure that we can continue to go out and care for these properties long term. So it's sort of a built-in insurance plan to make sure we can keep these places in great shape, and we really think of stewardship as the forever part of our work. So with all those together, that ends us up at the 2.85 million total project costs.
Thank you, Kristin, and thank you, Dana, for answering those questions. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have. If we didn't get to your question, or if you have something else you'd like to ask any of our panelists, or have a topic request for a future webinar, please do reach out to us at events@natureconservancy.ca, as you can see up there on your screen. So we understand that Town Island has played an important role in the lives of many, many people, generations of campers, local residents, neighboring cottagers, and we're asking you all to please partner with us to see this special property protected forever. Really exciting when Kristin shared that thanks to several generous donors, we've been offered $100,000 in matching gifts, and we'd be grateful to you if you'd consider helping us access these funds. You can make a donation online at natureconservancy.ca/Town Island. But if you'd like to discuss a multi-year pledge or larger gift, please contact us directly. One option that not everyone is aware of is that you can donate appreciated securities to charity and eliminate any capital gains on those stocks. And that can be a really efficient way to make a gift. And of course, we ask for your help in spreading the word about this project. Please consider sharing posts about Town Island with your social media networks, your personal networks, any other ways you can think. If you have any ideas on ways you can help us raise the profile of this project, we would love if you could get in touch with us. We also understand that there are many Americans who have cottages and camps on Lake of the Woods. If you would like to make a donation to this project, you have the option of making a gift to our partner, American Friends of Canadian Nature, which is a US charity, and they can provide you with a tax deduction letter upon your donation. If this could be an option for you, please contact us to discuss how to make your gift this way. So in closing, thank you to everyone who joined us today. It's been a tremendous response and lots of interest. It's really exciting. Dana and Kristin, thank you so much for sharing your insights and expertise. For updates on future webinars and events in your area, check out our events page at natureconservancy.ca events. Stay tuned for the link to today's webinar recording. You should be getting that in your inbox in the next 24 hours. On behalf of the Nature Conservancy of Canada, thank you again for joining us, and please have a wonderful evening, and I hope you join us again soon.